Oh, hello. My name is Freya Shamanka, and I've been feeling quite inspired to start chatting about the collective narcissism we are currently experiencing in the world and how we might actually start to heal and resolve this so that some of the big issues that we're facing at the moment can actually finally be solved. It's something I've been thinking about doing for quite a long time, but I've been on my own personal journey of healing from narcissistic abuse, and it's been taking up a huge amount of my time and energy, actually for the last 5 years. So I'm kind of coming out the other side of that process now. I'm still in it, but I'm in a much stronger position in myself and more able to actually start thinking about contributing, sharing, and potentially supporting this collective process. So yeah, I feel like it's time to start talking about this and really looking at how we might deal with this moving forward. So, most people are very familiar with the term narcissism. It's become the topic du jour, as it were. Um, Lots of people are aware of what narcissism is. Some might not have quite the right idea, but basically, it's a very hot topic at the moment, and understandably so. What I want to talk about is how that narcissism uh, issue is actually affecting us on a collective level, because lots and lots of people are suffering with narcissistic abuse on a personal level, and there are programs for dealing with that. One of which I have recently been using. Um, but actually, this is a much bigger problem. It's not just about our personal, individual experiences of being abused by narcissists, either as partners or in our families, or at work, in various different settings. But it all seems to be coming to a head at the moment, and there is a good reason for that. It feels like there's a lot more of it about, or there's a lot more problems in the world, but actually, what's happening is a huge boil that's been building up for thousands of years, actually, is finally coming to a head and it's erupting. And so we are now seeing all the I won't get graphic, but all the stuff that's inside there is now coming out, and we are seeing what has always been going on under the surface. But humanity has been very good at keeping the lid on it and suppressing it and coping and struggling with all the toxicity that has been building up. And basically, we can't do that anymore. We're having a collective healing crisis that's been probably going on. Well, it's been going on for some time, but it's particularly been going on this century. And since 2012, it's just coming out in big time. So basically, what I want to talk about is this is a spiritual problem. It's a political problem. It's an environmental problem. It cuts across everything. But we've been in a long journey with this. This is a long story. It's not something that's just coming out of thin air or just being created by certain individuals right now. This is a long process that we've been through collectively. And what I've witnessed is that individuals have been doing huge amounts of work now. I guess it probably started probably in the 60s or 70s, and has gradually been building up. I personally have been on this journey, the healing journey, since my 20s. I'm now 52. And so the 90s is when it all kind of woke up for me and I started finding things out. But didn't hear about narcissism in the way that we talk about it now until around 2012, actually, interestingly enough, when I hit a wall with my own family. Um, and somebody suggested, well, maybe your mother's a narcissist. And I was like, okay, not heard of that before. I know about alcoholism. I know about addiction. I know about codependency. I know about dysfunction and shame and all those things, but I'd not ever really looked at the narcissism. And to be fair, that kind of went in. It didn't go in one ear and out the other, but it went in, and I didn't really understand it, so it kind of got parked until 2017, when I ended up in a relationship, which was just just brought me back to the narcissism, shall we say. And that's when my healing process, which I've been on all my life, all my adult life, really, really kicked in, and I embraced it fully. So that's been happening to lots and lots, possibly millions, definitely hundreds of thousands of people, on an individual level. People who've been battered by narcissism in their personal lives have just really started healing from it and dealing with it. I guess we're coming out of denial. I think that's another way of looking at the boil. It's like the denial is gone, so we're actually seeing the reality of what's been happening in within humanity. And over the years of all that personal development that's been going on and people sort of working through things themselves, it's starting to come out as a potential collective healing as well, because there's enough individuals to create that that possibility. So I'd like to count myself as one of those people. I really hope that all the stuff I've been through and all that I've learned as a result of it can actually be utilised and help with the state of the world. That's my vision, my hope. I'm not going to focus so much on the personal because there are already people doing that, and I feel very, very much a collective person. I've always been looking at this from both the micro and the macro, and we are in dire need of direction and focus to help us get out of the collective trauma we're in at the moment. So the thing to bear in mind with anything to do with the collective or to do with a mass of anything is that it takes longer. So the journeys we go on with our individual lives are very, very short in comparison to the collective process of humanity, which takes thousands of years. And so you can kind of get a little glimpse of what might be happening on a grander scale if you look at the individual. So I will keep referring back to that. But basically, what I'm aware of at the moment is that we are in a crisis point. I'm sure I don't need you to spell things out, but just in a nutshell, we have a climate crisis, which is creating ever more extreme weather patterns and is causing food shortages, droughts, and various problems which are just going to get bigger and bigger. I'm not going to go into the details of that right now. We'll probably do so at some point. We also have an ecological crisis, which is actually just as dire, in fact, maybe more so, whereby interlinked problems, but we are losing habitats and animals at an alarming rate. We are in the 6th mass extinction, in the process of that right now, and it's just spiraling out of control. We are polluting rivers, we are polluting the waters, we're overfishing, we're destroying the Amazon. All of this links in with climate change, but it's also loss of biodiversity, and that has another spiraling effect, which will of course affect our food. So those two things are astronomically big at the moment and being tackled by lots of other organisations. But that is all part of the narcissism that's going on in the world, which I will come back to. And then you also have an ever increasing division between the poor and the rich. The gap is just getting bigger and bigger. And again, it's escalating at a phenomenal rate. I'm not sure about other countries, but certainly in the UK, we've been in this apparent cost of living crisis. I put it in whatever they're called because it's not actually the cost of living that we're dealing with. This is the cost of capitalism. This is the cost of some very monopolizing companies basically paying huge amounts of money to their shareholders, making much higher profits than they were making pre-COVID, and we're all paying for it. And apparently this is the cost of life, and it's not the cost of life. It is the cost of people siphoning off the money, the resources, and our energy. Again, more narcissism. So I won't refer to it as a cost of living crisis. I will refer to it as a cost of capitalism, because that's what it is. This is the cost. This is the outcome. This is the bottom line of what capitalism is doing to people and the world. So we've got that going on, and we've got huge amounts of mental, physical unwellness. You know, huge, again, in the UK, I can't comment about other countries, but I'm sure it's happening there as well, and other places as well. Huge swathes of people are not able to work because of mental and or physical problems. There is a general fatigue, there is a general overwhelm, there is a general sense of stress, and things just getting more and more impossible and difficult to deal with. Now, if you take all of those kind of collective problems, and I'm sure there are more, by the way, but those are in a nutshell what we're dealing with, they are all very symptomatic of narcissistic abuse. As in, those exact same things on a smaller scale would be happening to an individual who was being abused by a narcissist or group of narcissists. The breakdown of the body, the breakdown of the emotions, the being in constant crisis, not having any energy or time for. Sorry, that was the postman. Any other time to deal with anything but the crisis, and it just keeps escalating and getting more and more unmanageable till you are on your knees. So that is what we go through on a personal level, and that is exactly what we are currently going through on a collective level. And it feels frightening, it feels frustrating, it feels overwhelming, and it feels at times, I'm sure many people feel incredibly hopeless, because it's like you can't deal with any of it, you can't tackle any of it, and it's just getting worse. So that is effectively where I'm coming from. We collectively are in that right now, right here, right now, and it is only going to get worse. As with all healing crises, they do generally get worse before they get better. But I would like to say that I am not bringing you a message of doom and gloom at all. I really, really, on the contrary, I want to bring a message of hope and solutions, and that is really what I want to bring to the table. So I will talk about the difficulties, but I would like to say something that's really, really quite important, and that is that one of the ways that we are being blindsided and controlled by the narcissistic entity, and I'm not talking about individuals pulling strings here or conspiracies. That may or may not be going on, but I don't want to get into that because that's just a distraction. I'm just talking about the phenomenon of the ego, the collective ego is coming up and it's shouting, want to get back to, we want more, and we don't care who we're going to destroy in the process. So that while we're going through that, there has been a really big increase via the internet of, shall we say, groups, organisations, movements, or just individuals who are really stoking up the fear, and the rage and the hatred. And I really, really strongly advise against engaging in those, because all they do is they spiral your energy down and keep you trapped. So my personal approach to this is be honest, be upfront, face reality, and then move on to the solution and move on to how we can empower ourselves and make real changes so that this can actually be ceased. So yeah, that's what I'm planning on doing. And my first thing I'd like to explain is what narcissism actually is, or rather what I'm referring to when I say that word. Because obviously, again, we can get into semantics and people can say, well, it's really this and it's really that, and that's all distraction. What I'm talking about is human toxic abusive behaviour. The cause of it, not interested in right now. We might look at it at some point, but it's what is actually happening. And whether you talk about narcissism, being a sociopath, being a psychopath, or anything in those realms of antisocial behaviour, what we're talking about is people with a lack of conscience, which leads to being willing to lie, cheat, manipulate, control, punish, abuse, discard, all of those things, because basically people who are in the toxic bracket do not care. They don't feel what they're doing to you. In fact, they get off on it. They feel better for making you feel worse. And there are huge swathes of people who are in that bracket who do not appear to be so, who are covert in the way they behave and can look like the most conscientious, caring people in the world. I've come across numerous narcissists like that, and it's very disturbing. But it's not about how good somebody looks. It's about ultimately what they do under pressure and what they're doing under the scenes and how they're manipulating things. Again, I'm not trying to create paranoia here or everybody getting super like, well, are they a narcissist? What are they doing? Ultimately, the only thing you can really rely on is your feelings. That is the core and the key. If somebody or something is causing your energy and your emotions to feel like they're spiraling down a plug hole, either because you're putting huge amounts of energy and it's going nowhere, or because you're getting into circular arguments, or because they are trying to elicit extreme feelings of fear, terror, powerlessness, paranoia, any of those things, it's basically a feed for the narcissists. That is what they get their energy from. So things to be looking out for is always how somebody or something is making you feel. Now, of course, we all have our own stuff and we all can get triggered by things, but my experience is that if it's triggering, there's a reason for it. It doesn't automatically make that person bad or toxic or any of those things, but there's something for you to look at. There's something for me to look at what's going on. And we will talk about that more at some point. But we're looking for what I'm talking about here is people who will not really admit to wrongdoing, or they will basically pay lip service to that. They'll say, oh, I'm really sorry. A lot of them will be like, oh, really sorry, really apologetic. But then they'll just carry on doing exactly what they were doing before, or, it will shapeshift into something slightly different, but it's basically the same thing. But your bona fide narcissist will find it almost impossible to say sorry for to take responsibility, unless they have a vested interest in making noises of looking like that. A really, really good example is Boris Johnson, our ex-Prime Minister, who is people call Teflon shoulders. That kind of explains it all, really. That's a really good example of narcissism. It just rolls off. Just carry on, stonewall what's being said, deny it. No, not right, no, this is what really happened. Swearing black is white or white is black, and just not taking it on. But that's the more overt narcissism that you can see very clearly, and you're like scratching your head going, how can that person be saying that when that's happening? It's like really insane behaviour. That's really obvious. So lack of accountability, lack of responsibility, ability to just lie, and lie very well and very easily, like it doesn't mean anything to that person. It doesn't mean anything. To them, it's just, that's normal. That's normal behaviour. The reason why narcissists are doing all of this is because essentially they are pure ego. The rest of us all have egos. We all have ego defences. We all have egotistical moments. But with a narcissist, what they lack is the conscientious conscience the part of us that makes us question ourselves, makes us feel genuine guilt and shame if we do something wrong, and want to make amends, and caring about other people. Hopefully not more than ourselves, because that's the other extreme of the spectrum. You've got the narcissism, which is pure ego, and then you've got the other extreme, which is codependency, which is I don't have a self at all, I'm all about you. And those two quite often end up together. And they certainly, it's all about false selves on both counts. So we will be looking at codependency as well. I have struggled with that myself massively. But just to sort of tie that up a little bit now, I'll explain that if you have an abusive situation, let's just say a child for a moment being abused by a parent or in whatever way, or an adult, what that child will do is they will either absorb the shamelessness of that abuse, the person who's doing it, and take responsibility for it, internalize it, and become the manifestation of it. As in, I'm the one to blame, I'm at fault, I caused this, I'm bad, I feel guilty, what can I do to stop it? And then internalizing it, spend the rest of their lives trying to fix themselves and change the outcome outside. That's your classic codependent response. It's like, even if you're not aware of the abuse, you've forgotten it, whatever, it goes in and you internalize it, and then you carry it around for that person. They have completely disowned it, any responsibility for it, and quite possibly actively blamed you for it. But even just by ignoring it, they're blaming you for it, and you end up carrying it. That's one response. The other response is you take it on and then you go, I'm not carrying this, and then you pass the buck to somebody else and you become a bully, an abuser, a manipulator yourself, otherwise known as a narcissist. Basically, what the narcissists are doing is they are refusing to carry that pain. They're refusing it. And by passing it on, of course, all they're doing is perpetuating it. Whereas the codependent will be perpetuating it, but they'll be doing that by absorbing more and attracting more and accepting more, which is actually enabling people to be abusive. So it's not ideal either. It's certainly not a way out. But obviously it is a pathology that mostly affects the person who's codependent, predominantly. Whereas a narcissist will be offloading it onto anybody who will absorb it for them. So that's essentially the dynamic. There is a third path. There is a third way of being. Well, actually, there's probably four ways. The third way is to be kind of slightly on the outside of it all and just not getting involved. Sometimes people, talk about flying monkeys. People who are enabling that to happen, but are not absorbing it themselves and are not kind of passing it on, but they're allowing it to happen. I would say probably 70 or 80% of the population, a very large chunk of the population, would be in that camp of kind of not causing most of the trouble directly and not absorbing most of the pain directly, but kind of enabling it to exist, not challenging it, and not fully supporting those who are being abused. I've just made a percentage up there. I will think about that a bit more, but that, I would say, is the vast majority of humanity fit in that bracket. And those are the people we really need to start showing a different way to, because those people will go wherever the flow of energy is going. So if narcissists are ruling the planet because they're the ones in charge, then these people will just go with the flow of what they're doing. They will enable that to continue. Whereas if the people who've been affected by directly and painfully by narcissism actually go through their healing process and start offering an alternative leadership, enlightened leadership that is all about equality, highest good of all, having a conscience, having principles, all of those things, the exact opposite, if you like, of narcissism, then these people at the bottom will start to follow them because there's another way is available. And that is essentially what I think is happening or will happen. And I would like to be part of that. But even if it doesn't happen in my lifetime, I think that is essentially what we're talking about, a switch from narcissistic leadership to enlightened leadership. There will always be leadership. You will always have the bulk of people will follow and just go wherever they're led, whatever's the path of least resistance. They'll have their opinions and they will be contributing to that, but they're essentially not really thinking about it very much. The people who are thinking about it are the predators and those being preyed on, those being scapegoated, bullied, attacked, etc. The ones who are carrying the pain. They're the two groups, the smaller percentages, who will actually are going to potentially shift over from one to the other. I tend to look at these from an elemental point of view. I like looking at everything elementally, and I consider narcissists are like fire. They burn energy, they consume, they are hot, they create crisis and drama, and it's like the more, the brighter, the bigger, the better for them, and then they just bring stuff in and they eat it, and it burns them, but it runs out, so they have to find more fuel to fill it. That is what narcissists are doing essentially with the resources of the planet, including the people and your energy. Then you've got what I would call the wood people, the people who are the main source of fuel for the narcissists. Now, I will come back to the wood people in a minute because they have a unique role to play. But the vast majority of humanity are like air. They are flowing with everything around them, and they're just going where the collective goes, and they're just adding weight to it. So the wood people are a mixture of earth, if you like, or matter, and water. Now, if you think of wood or a tree, the water's inside the wood. The narcissists are burning that wood. That's what they're like, yummy, yummy, I'm going to burn that wood. Literally burning fossil fuels, literally burning wood, literally burning people as well in some cases, certainly historically. But when a person goes through that fire, that transformation, what is released is water, and it's hot water, so it evaporates. And it's the water that is the key, because that is where the healing is. That is the soul. That is the core of who we are. So when the narcissists do their job of burning the wood of the solid people who are kind of, if you think of wood as being layers of karma or whatever you want to call it, stuff we built up, they burn it, and out of that is released is water, evaporated water, which then goes up into the air and creates rain, which creates more growth and cooling. So that transformation process is incredibly important, because in a way, if it wasn't for the narcissists doing their job of consuming, then you wouldn't have this transformation process. So I'm not trying to I'm trying to see the bigger picture here, that there is a role for everybody, narcissist or not. Everybody is playing their role in the big human drama, shall we say, the big human story. So I'm aware of the time, we're coming up to nearly 30 minutes, and I don't really want to ramble on for any longer. But I would like to say that there is a way out of this. There is a healing, and there is a very definite process taking place right now. And I would really like to continue talking to you about this and helping develop the understanding and ultimately the solutions. For now, just start noticing your energy and what feelings you're having around certain individuals or certain activities that you're engaging in, particularly online, things you're reading. Just you don't have to make a judgment, just notice, what is this making me feel? Does this uplift me? Does this make me feel excited, positive? Does this make me feel loved, supported? Or is this making me feel increasingly frightened, increasingly angry, increasingly hateful, or paranoid, or powerless? And just observe, maybe make some notes and have a think about it. You don't have to take any action now, just observe yourself in those situations, in those relationships, and how you're feeling. And yeah, just reflect on that. So I'm going to sign off now. My name is Freya Shamanka, and I'm really happy to be talking to you, and hopefully see you at the next video. Bye bye.